let's go ahead and we're going to get rid of this. Clean up after ourselves. Good. Now, what we want to talk about now is loading files. We can see that right here, this is actually loading a file. So is this. That's loading a file. So is this. That's loading a file. Okay. So how do you load a file? And why do you want to load a file? Well, let me come back over. Let's start in WordPress core. All right, so I'm going to close this down so we can see. If we come to index.php, this is where WordPress first starts up. That's the very first file that's going to run with a standard web page request. Okay, and what you can see here is first it does a define, which by the way, define is actually setting up a constant. I should have covered that in variables. Sorry about that. What's a constant? It says you set a value for it once and then you can't change it. It's constant. It's never going to change. Notice that it's all in caps and then we're using the underscores to separate the words. And then you can go and use that. So you can go and say WP use themes. Okay, that's a constant. You can use that in your code now. So sorry, I should have covered that before. All right, then we get down to here, loads the WordPress environment and template. This loads a specific file. Okay, that's what it's doing, some specific file. Now, where's the file at? wp-blog-header.php. Okay, come down the list, wp header blog-header right there. It loads that file. Okay, and then we come in here and we say, all right, then it loads another file. Then it runs WP, which is a function, and then it goes and loads another file. Okay, files, 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 and then eventually it's going to come and load WP config, then loads WP settings, and so on. And this is what will then load our functions.php in our theme. Right here, functions.php. We can see it right there. Okay. So loading files is critical now that we've broken things up into logical little subparts, logical little groupings of code, right? So we've put them into files. Now we need to load those files in a specific order. And the code decides when to load a file. It does that with a couple of things. One is an include. All right. Another is a require. And then there's ones called require _once and include _once. Okay, well, what are those? Open up your function.php in your theme. I don't care which theme that you're running. And then type this with me. We're going to say include and then do a directory. And then we're going to say a string. See, it's just a single quote. So we've got dot means what? Come on, I taught you this earlier. It means take this one and append this string to the end of that. Okay. Then we're going to go and put a slash in there and now say this file doesn't exist. Okay, it's not a real file. What's going to happen with that one? Now I want to try it with a require also. Require. Okay, let's see what we get between the include and the require. Okay, we're going to come up here and refresh. Okay, so I get a warning that says the include here is just a warning, letting me know that this file, there's no such file in the directory. Okay. And it comes down and it says there's no such file in the directory. Then I come over here and I get a require. Notice at first it's a warning and then it's a fatal error, which means your program just stopped running. That website just crashed. So the difference then between an include and a require is what? One gives you a warning and the other one makes your website crash. See, it says require right there. Failed opening the required and it tells you the file. Why? Because it doesn't exist. Right? I even told you that in the name of the file. So therefore you use a require when that file is absolutely required and you're not sure if it exists or not. Maybe it's changeable. Maybe it's in a module someone else is building in your project. Okay. So that's when you use a require. Include just says, Hey, if that file doesn't exist, I'll give you a warning and I'll keep on going. Okay, so I use the rule of thumb of when. When do I use include? When do I use require? I use require when it's absolutely mission critical. That file has to be there. And I'm concerned that one, it's in a plugin or a theme that I didn't write or in a framework that I didn't write. So therefore it could change. The name could change of it. Or if it's something to where multiple people are building, which means it could change or not be there. Or there's a situation where the client is going in and changing files around, renaming things, moving things around. If that's the case, then you might want to use require when the site has to have it positively. It will not run properly without it. Okay. The include, just load files. If it's not there, it's not the end of the world. If you wrote the code, you know it's going to be there. So it can just be an include. Okay. What's the difference between include once and require once? Okay. Let's put that in. Okay. Now I've got that in. Let's go and refresh. Okay. Notice that it's still the same. Nothing's different. Okay. So nothing changed there. The once means that no matter how many times this code runs, I only load that file one time, period. Don't let it run more than that. Okay. Functions.php only runs one time anyway. It's only loaded out of WordPress core. You can see it right here. With this include, it's only going to run it once. Well, here, let me just prove that to you. I'm going to shut down some of this stuff here. Too much stuff, right? So I'm going to come in here and let's just comment this out so that we don't fatal error. And then we go and say running functions.php. And I misspelled that. I know it's in a string. It's not going to cause anything to crash. Let's see how many times we get that up on the screen. Ready? We're going to refresh. I got it one time. It only runs once, just one time. So we don't have to use like we're doing here. We can just use include. We don't have to say include once. Okay. So therefore, what's your rule of thumb for using include or using include once? Well, it depends. If that file needs to only load one time and one time only, then you say include once. And that's only in the case where there's a risk where you know the code is going to run more than one time. So if functions.php were going to run more than once, then you'd want that to be include once. If you have it in a loop, okay, so maybe you have like a for each or something and it's in a loop. I only want it to run once, just load that file one time. That's it. Well, you could do that too, okay? So therefore, you have to decide. I can let it load more than once. I can do it only one time. I can use just an include, or I can make it mission critical, meaning if it's not there, I make my website crash and give me that ugly message up on the screen with this require once. Okay. So that's how that works. This loads files. Both of these load files. So does the other version of it, which is just the include and the require. Now let's look at the syntax here. I have include, which is a keyword, right? It's a function out of PHP, just like any other function, just like when we did our add numbers. Okay, require. Then we have our parentheses, so we know that it's a function. It's something that's going to go and do work. That's what functions do. They do work. Then we pass in the actual location of what we want to load up. Directory here is one of these magical constants that comes out of PHP, and it's the directory that you're currently in. Okay, so this file, where it's currently located at, that's what that is. Okay, and then you can go in and put the actual file itself, the rest of the route to where it's at. Okay, so let's build our own real quick. I want to show you that actually does work. So the theme that you're in now, let's create one that's called, I don't know, Sandbox. Okay, so go ahead and create that. I'm going to call it just sandbox.php like this. And then when we get in here, we're going to go and die and dump, and we'll say, yep, I loaded. Maybe even put sandbox.php. That way you know that was the file that did load. Okay, and if I come back over to here, now I want to load that. I'm going to comment this out. And it was called Sandbox, right? Okay, are you up with me yet? Did you put that in? Good. Now let's go ahead and let's run this. And I want to show you that that works. Refresh. Yep, I loaded. Hey, cool. Okay. Now let's do this. Okay, we're just going to loop through this a couple of times. Okay, I want to show you that what the difference is between include and include once next. Okay, ready? So we're going to do a for each, and then we're going to pass in something that we want to loop through. We'll declare that here in just 1 second. So this will be our stupid loop. Yep. And then I'll just say loop like this. I'm just setting this up just so that we run. Okay, and then up here, we're going to go and define our stupid loop. We'll just say array, and then just put a couple of numbers in here. 4. Okay, so come back over. Down here, we want to go and just die. And just put a message in here and just says done, like that. Okay, back over here in your sandbox, just do DDD. Yep, I loaded. I want to see if I'm just using the include, how many times does that load? 1, 2, 3, 4. Ready? Let's go run this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I got done. Did you see that? Here, I'm going to slide this over so you can see it. You actually just wrote a little code here. So we set up a variable. We just did an array with just some stupid numbers in it. Then we actually, this is a loop through. We'll cover that a little bit later. You don't need to understand this code just yet, but we looped through each one of these. We did 0, 2, 3, 4. We just looped through them one at a time, which means we called that include more than once. We called it 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Okay. And you can see up here. Now, what if I said include once? What happens? Watch this. Once. It only calls it one time. Okay. Does that help you to understand the difference between include once and include? Okay, let's do require. How many times is the require going to run now? 4 times. Now change it to require once. How many times is it going to run? Once. Even though we still are looping, here, just so that you can see, let's do a dump of just loop. I should have done that to begin with. Okay, so what value are we getting? I want to show you that we still are looping, right? I looped on the first one, the value was 0. Okay, and then I did 2, 3, and 4. So you can see the numbers that it pulled out of there. And on the very first one, I ran it 1 time. Okay, but if I go and I remove that, let's do that again. Now you can see I went 0, I loaded it. 2, I loaded it. 3, I loaded it. 4, I loaded it. Okay, that's how you load files.